Hey, what's up? In this video, we are going to create a dialogue system like the one from Disco Elysium. I'm going to show you in detail how to build the interface and then how to connect this interface to a dialogue engine. And finally, we'll be implementing the branching and passive and active checks. I've been getting this question of how to build a Disco Elysium style dialogue system since I released my first video a few years ago, and it took me some time, but here we are. The main reason for the delay is that I had never played Disco Elysium, so I did, and what the f? Yes, I did shave my beard for a 2-second joke, and also it took me so long to edit this video that it grew back. We just need to go back in time now so we can implement this thing together. How much is 88 miles an hour in kilometers? Okay, I guess things are looking slightly different now because I was recording for an hour and I forgot to record my screen. So let's try again. So this is a new project I just created, a new Godot project. Let's start with the foundation. I'm gonna add a margin container. So the margin container here, the margin container needs to be on the right hand side. So I'm going to use this really handy anchor preset. So I'm just setting to this side, and so I'm going to add a panel container. This is the one that I'm going to define the background and stuff. Well, I guess it does need a minimum size. 550 was the one I saw. Well, this looks quite big, and it's because I'm using the default resolution here. So this is gonna be 1080p. So coming back here, you see now it's this line defines like my viewport. So just gonna come back here again and just gonna set the preset again. So now it's on the right hand side. That's nice. For the margin container, I need to set the margin, right? So I think maybe 80. Yeah, okay. I mean, this is very subjective, so you choose whatever works best for you. Coming back to the example here, there is a little bit of a transparency here. So what I'm going to use for the container, I'm going to override the style. I could use the theme to do that. It's just because I just want this to be specific for the container. I'm just going to use the style, the panel style, and I'm going to set the style box flat. So this is because I'm not using a texture here. So you see this one is a texture. So probably for this one, you would have, if you want to use a texture, you need to use a style box texture. But what's more likely you have to do is maybe using this 9-patch rect. This one you can have like a texture that's defined like in 9 sections, and it can be expanded as much as it needed. But yeah, for this one, I'm just going to use flat because flat should be enough. For the colors, so this one I think is just black with some transparency. We can adjust this later, and this won't be visible here. I can set this border as well, so it looks more similar to those ones. How much is that border width? So I'm going to set one each side. So for the colors, usually if I'm using something as a reference, I use like some color picker thing like this one, and I just pick from the image. But depending on the image, and as this has a little bit of transparency, it's going to be different. But I just saved all the codes for the colors I'm going to use. This is the one. All right, so this looks similar. Oh, I haven't saved this yet, so let's save. I'm going to create a folder called dialog system. So saving here. When you're talking about the interface, usually called drawer, those panels that come from the sides. All right, so this is looking good. So inside the panel container, I need a scroll container. So scroll container is the one that's gonna have scroll bars. And inside the scroll container, we do a VBox container. Going to layout, I want it to expand so it covers everything. And then just for testing, let me add a label like this. And then I'm just gonna duplicate like this. Okay, so now you see you have scroll. If I execute this thing here, yeah, now I have the scroll bar. You can customize the scroll bar, but for now, let's leave it like this. Coming back to the interface, let me delete those ones. In here, the dialog line usually comes speaker, and then we have this long dash and the line, the actual line. Sometimes we also have this passive check. And the speaker also can have a different color in its name. As I said, I usually start with margin containers because it's just easier to work with. And this is going to be a rich text label, I guess. The reason I'm using a rich text label is because you can use BB code. So if I enable here, let me see if there is the documentation for BB code here. let me look for a BB code. So BB code allows us to use this kind of tags here. So you can set like the color and different things, and we will need different colors for the speaker and the other thing. So coming back here, this VBox container, I actually need to align the items at the end, right? Because we want this to be at the end of the drawer. Yeah, so let me save the dialog line to its own scene. So save branches scene, dialog entry should be fine. So let's define the contract for this line here. I'm gonna add a script. So we're gonna have a method that's be set content. It's gonna receive a speaker. Well, for now, let's make a speaker string, and then the text, that's also gonna be a string, and the passive check, I guess. But the passive check is also a string, but it might not be there, so I'm just gonna add a default of a empty string. One thing I like to do is to have my nodes set to variable. So if I do this, text, and I like this one to be here. I know that I can access the node directly like this, and also I could set a unique access name, but as a preference, I do like to have it as variable. I find it more flexible and easier to change. And I also like to set the type here, because Godot has this thing that if I'm actually in a different scene here, the autocomplete won't have a hint for what's the type of this thing, because this script can be attached to any scene. If you define the type, then you get autocomplete regardless. Okay, so now we need to set the content, and for now let's just do a text, right? And it's going to receive, I'm going to use interpolation here. So the first part will be the speaker, then we have the dash. Well, okay, so I just copied this long dash because I don't know how to make it, and then you have the text, right? Now we need to pass an array because it's multiple, and it's going to replace in order. So just going to set the ready method here with, just for testing, let's add. So let's set some BB code here, right? So the speaker will have a color. This is BB code for color. Don't remember if it accepts like the short syntax for the RGB value, but let's see. Okay, so this one should be red. So if I execute this, see it's red, nice. Okay, so I also need the passive check, right? So this needs to be passive check. So execute the drawer here. Yep, you see it's showing it as it's supposed to be. So to make executing this simpler, let me create a new scene. This will be my main scene, and I'm gonna come to this scene and set my dialog drawer here. Okay, I need a canvas layer because this will be like a HUD, right? And then I move the dialog drawer here. So if I press this one, I can set the current scene to be the default one. So now every time I press play, regardless on the scene I am, we are going to see the right thing. That's good. Let me pick the right colors for this one. Executing this again. Nice. This font's too small, so let me, I guess for this one, it's probably better if I get to the dialog drawer and I start a theme. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it's just easier, I guess, because then it's going to apply to all the components inside the drawer. And then for this one, I guess default font size 20. Should that be right? Execute. Yeah, okay, looks good. Nice, I like it. Okay, so let's start coding the drawer actually. Okay, so for the drawer, let's implement a function called next. And this function is the one that's gonna print the dialog lines, right? So for this one, I actually need the dialog entry here. And every time someone press next, we are gonna get a new dialog line. Soon we're gonna make this dynamic, actually coming from the real dialog, but for now, we're just gonna do like dialog entry set content. So this content is going to come from the dialog. So okay, so this, and all right, so in the drawer, the view box is where the lines should be. So I'm just going to call dialog entries. For this one, I don't really care about the type. So I can either set the real type or just do a control. So it's just, I don't know, dialog entries container. And then I'm going to add child entry. Just going to move this down, all right? Cool. To make sure this next works, I'm going to do the ready thing, next. Now if I execute this, we should have the entry there anyway. Perfect. Now let's go to my main scene again. So this scene, and I'm gonna add a script to this scene, and we're gonna hook to the input, right? So this is just an oversimplified boilerplate, so we don't really need to go too crazy, but I might make a video on how I handle input usually, but yeah, this should be alright, so do it. Next, okay. So now if I come here and I press the button to the space button, that's UI accept, you see I get all those new lines, and yeah, and then I have the scroll. This scroll though, it's just in place. We need the scroll to go to the end as this thing moves. Lucky for me, I've implemented this before, and it's actually quite simple. So let me go to the dialog drawer here. What I need is the scroll container, and look the scroll in the scroll container, and every time there is a change on its size, I want to make sure that that's the value for the current scroll. Okay, yeah, I need to click multiple times, and there's no scroll bar, so no reason to scroll. So now you see that even though this is growing, the scroll bar is still at end. So if I'm there above and I click again, it goes to the end. So when I was looking for examples of dialogues, I found this site here. You can just jump into a conversation and click the options, and it basically shows you the actual dialogue. So I've used this to get a sample dialogue. Otherwise, I would have to think on a dialogue, and I'm not that smart. So let's see how it looks like. Okay, so there's one small detail here that's really annoying to solve. If you see our example here, so you have the name, it starts the dialogue, but then there's this indentation here. If the indentation here was farther, like if we just wanted this to get a little bit farther, we could just add some spaces there, but here you want this before the block of text. And this only happens to the first line, and I mean, here is the simplest way I found to fix this, if you really want this indentation. So, hey, Vinny from the future here. This part of the video was a little bit prolific, so I'm back here to explain to you in a simplified way how I implemented that indentation. To solve this issue, I'm going to use the indent BB code, which is going to indent all the text from that point onwards. So I need to find in the text the position where that line breaks. One of the caveats in my original implementation is that the BB code to format speakers and checks, they are not visible in the interface. So when you get the position using range, you're going to get a position in the string that doesn't account for that BB code. So the action solution is that I need to operate in the plain text. For that, I create a plain text string with speaker, with checks, and with the text. After that, I use the range method to get the position in the full string, and then I calculate the actual position in the text minus the speaker information. With this info now, I can just rebuild with the indent in the right position. I hope it makes sense. From here on in the video, you might see the indent broken in a few places, but just ignore that because that's fixed in the final implementation. Now back to the video. You see now the indent is there. How cool is that? Now let's handle the speaker information. So coming back to the example here, most speakers, they use the default color, but when it comes to the skills, they usually have their own signature color. There is also picture, that's something that changes depending on the speaker. And also, I guess, when it comes to the dialog files, you might want to refer to the speaker in a simplified way. Like you don't want to repeat ancient reptilian brain on every line. Like you probably will have like something shorter to refer to that speaker. What you want here is to set all this information based on your speaker ID. And there are a few ways you can do that. So a solution is to use resources. I guess resources make things more streamlined, and this is what I'm going to do here. So let me come to my dialog system here and create a new script, and this script will be called speaker. All right, let me delete this. By extending resources, this allows you to create files that follow this contract. Like I'm coming to resource here and I'm going to select a speaker, you see? So now let me create a folder just for the speakers. This one will be default, okay, default speaker, right? And in here, if I click here, in this side you see the inspector is showing the information about the resource, but I don't have any properties here, so let's do it. So the first one will be the speaker name. This will be a string, and I'll just set as default empty. Don't know if I need to do this. It's still not showing here, and the reason is because I haven't exported this thing to show in the interface. So I'm just going to do export, and now it's in here, see? The second one is probably the color, and that's the coolest one because I can just do, again, I'm going to export this new one, and for this color it's going to be the color class. So that's the cool thing. I can just set the color, right? And then in here I have this option. So I'm going to go ahead and create the resources for all the speakers in the sample. Okay, so now I created the one for the encyclopedia, Inland Empire, and Limbic System, because those are the ones I'm going to use in the sample dialog. Let's go back to my dialog entry thing. So speaker, instead of being string, now it needs to be a speaker resource. So that's another cool thing, because now you have the type, right? So in here in the speaker info, I need to get the name, right? So get speaker name and to upper, I guess. So okay, let's just do this and go back to the drawer. And now what we want to do here is to bring the speaker resource. So for that, I'm going to create a method here that's going to be get speaker resource, right? And I receive the speaker name or ID or whatever you want to call this. And it's going to return a speaker resource, right? Cool. So I'm going to set a constant here. It'll be speaker resources folder, right? And if resource loader exists, so this is going to check if that speaker path exists, right? Load and do a speaker path, right? This should be enough. But we're still not using the right colors, right? Now we need to use the color. So the way I implement this one, this color is a color object. So in the dialog entry, I need to change this color. Speaker.speaker color. I think it's to HTML, right? That's how you do it, I guess. And then in here, because I think this does include the hash, so in here I'm going to do this, right? So now if I execute this one should be white because that's the default color. But then let me come back here and change this guy to be encyclopedia again. You see, now it's back to blue. If I go to the limbic system, now it's yellow. Perfect. There are a few things though that we need to cover here. The first one is that this color is not right? This is just white. And in here, actually, the default is this grayish color. I'm just gonna come to the dialog drawer, and we had already created theme for the drawer, so I can just open this theme. It's in this tab here, see? I'm gonna add an override for the rich text object, right? Okay, and in here, I'm gonna set the default color. Okay, looks slightly better. Now let's implement the options or branching or topics, those options here. So I'm going to add a VBox container here, and this will be called options, right? And here's where I'm going to add each one of the options. I think the options will be complex enough that it will justify its own scene. So let me do like this, right? Line container. So this one will be, call it the dialog option already. I'll add a probably HBox because I need a number, and the number will be a label, and then a button because I just want to create as a button because then the interface already it's ready for being like clicked, you know. Option 1, cool. So let me change the style for this one. Get overrides. Okay, so the color of the font, where is it? Font color here. Just gonna do it red, right? This is the one. Well, we don't want a background, so I should come to styles, and if it's normal, this one, and I need to set that. The thing though is that I need to do the same for if it's focused. I might have to change, so I'm just copying this resource here, so it doesn't really do anything weird. Usually when it's hovered or when it's selected, I think it's white. So I'm gonna set white, and if it's pressed, it's slightly darker, so I can see that it's pressed, right? So if I execute this and I click here, oh, it's white, and then boom, 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 boom. Okay, perfect. Let me save this in another scene now. And yeah, you could have like multiple options like this. That looks pretty good. So we need to define the margin so it aligns with this one. I don't know if there is anything interesting about this, so I'm going to speed up, I guess. Yeah, okay. So for the dialog system, for writing the dialog, authoring the dialog, you can use whatever you want. So for this example here, I'm going to use Clyde. That's the plugin I created for dialogues. So the reason I want to use Clyde is because it's just simple, but I'm still going to implement the rest of these in a way that you can hook whatever system you want. It's just that I'm going to follow a little bit the principles with Clyde. So let me start by creating a test file here. I'm going to create a dialogues folder. Okay, and this will be just test. Okay, and in here I'm going to say hello world. Cool. Saving this one. Well, I won't go through all features because I think it's not the point of this tutorial. But if Clyde, each line becomes a dialogue line, and Clyde has this player on the side. So if you see like a click, Vinny is a speaker, hello world, and then world, hello Vinny. That's basically how it works. And actually, you do have some freedom when it comes to formatting. Like I could do more of a movie script format here like this, and still like would identify the speakers like that. Now let's use Clyde in that dialog system. So let me go to my drawer here. I'm going to implement a new method that's going to be start, right? So the start dialog. And this is going to receive a dialog name. When I do that, I need to initialize my dialog. So in here, I have a dialog. That's going to be a Clyde dialog. Okay, perfect. So in here, I'm going to initialize the Clyde dialog thing. So I'm going to use this to load my dialog. And for this one, I'm just going to pass the dialog name. That's what you need to start your dialog. But I guess after you start the dialog, you want to do next, right? You want to start your dialog. So next is our method to create the dialog entry. The way Clyde works is actually every time you want a new line, you need to ask for the content for that line. So I'm going to actually call it content, and I'm going to do dialog get content, right? So there are three types of content that can come from the dialog, from the Clyde dialog get content. So the content comes with a type field. So let me match this content type, right? And the type might be, let me use the constants here. So content type might be line. This is just a simple dialog line. It might be options. This is your options, or it might be end, meaning that the dialog ended, right? So let's handle each one of these scenarios. So let's say every time you get a dialog line, let's create another method here. This thing is going to become a new method called add line, okay? And you get the content. So in here, let's do this. So we get the entry. I'm going to create a dialog entry. Now in here, we do have the speaker as part of this content. So I'm just going to do content.speaker, right? And in here, I'm going to do content.text. And just going to remove these options for now. So now if I execute this, let me see, next, you get this. And I'm just going to do a print here for dialog ended. Let's make a fancy dialog selector here. So let me add another margin container. And in here, what I'm going to do is I get the dialog drawer start. Okay? And I'm going to pass test. Because by default, Clyde looks for dialogues on the dialog folder. So as long as you have a file named test, it's going to just do the trick. So now if I click here, you see hello world, because we do the next after that. And then if I press again, you see hello Vinny. Nice. You see, I got to the end of the dialog, and now I just got dialog ended. So let's do this. When I press this will be hidden. When I press the button, it shows the drawer. And when the dialog ends, it hides the drawer. So let's do that. So now in my drawer, I'm going to add a signal. The signal is the dialog ended. Okay, and in here, instead of just printing, I do dialog ended, and I'm going to emit. So no drawer, I click, it shows up, and then when it gets to the end, it hides the drawer. Now let's add some options. Let's handle the option scenario. So the way we do options with Clyde, if you use a star, this is a regular option. So I'm going to add here just so you know. If you do a equals, it asks the dialog to print the same option, the same line as an option. So let me just do this, just so it's pretty simple. So I'm going to execute here. So here I have option 1, option 2. If I click option 1, it prints option 1. Now I need to reset the dialog. And you see that now what was option 1 is not in the list anymore, because this is a single use option. By default, options are single use. If you do want the option to be persistent, you can do the same by using a plus instead. So this is a sticky option. So if I use plus, now you see that even if I select this, you see if I execute again, the option, you still can choose it. So I'm gonna choose the first one. Yeah, there is documentation that explains all those features, so you can just look into it and see if it fits the bill, if it fits your plans for your dialogues. Now that we have the options, let me get back to the drawer, and if the content type is options, in entry we do set options, and then I just need to pass options. See? So now we need to make sure that once we press this button, it selects the option, continues the dialog. So in this case, so what we're going to do here is like option selected, select option. So instead of printing, you can do dialog.choose. That's the from client, like you pass the index of the option. In this case, just pass the index. And after that, we want to continue, so we just do a next. Okay? So now here, again, let's do it. And option 1, you see goodbye, and then goes back to the option list. Option 2 is going to end the dialog. So that's it, end of the dialog. I just realized that that's actually not what happens when you end the dialog in Disco Elysium. Usually you have this big red button that either says continue or end, and then when you press again, it's when it ends. Hey, it's me again to save you from boredom. In this next part, I spent some time implementing the end button and also making sure I could select the options using the keyboard keys. It was not very interesting, so I'll just skip that part and you can check the code later. All right, so now we have options, we have ending. It looks good, it looks pretty good. What is missing? The way passive checks work is basically you have your main dialog going on, and at some point this background implicit check is going to happen, and when it succeeds, you might get like an extra dialog line from one of your skills, or sometimes even a branching dialog. So there are a few ways this could be implemented. I'm going to do the simplest one. Well, not necessarily the simplest one, but the one I think fits the scenario best. Okay, so to explain how we're going to implement this, I need to explain a little bit some of the features in Clyde. So in Clyde, there is the concept of variables, and these variables can be external variables, which are just a proxy to your game. Let me just do this. So I'm going to access a variable that's called passive check. And if this variable is true, this line is going to show up. So now if we execute this dialog, dialog line 1, dialog line 2, it passed straight through this one because the passive check is an external variable and it's not available. So there is a debugger here. I'm just going to do passive check like this. It's a boolean and I'm set to true. So now I save. If we execute the dialog again, now you're going to see that this line is actually being printed. Perfect. This is what we want. Let's do this in the game. So first, let's prepare the game to execute the passive check dialog. So now if I press passive, you see this dialog line, there's a second dialog line, and then the third line, the one that is supposed to be shown, it's not shown because the external variable is not there. Here's what we need to do to be able to use this variable. So in my dialog drawer, this place here where I start the dialog object also exposes these methods here on external variable fetch and on external variable update. The names are self-explanatory. When the external variable is fetched, this is the one we want to override. We can do it in line here. So this one is going to receive a variable name, it's a string, and it can return anything. What we're going to do here is that if variable name is equals to passive check, and again, you can use any names, you can use multiple variables to your passive check. I'm just giving you an example here. So I'm going to return true. This is just to show you that the line is going to be shown in our game, right? So if I come here and I execute this, you see this is the line I added, and it's because now the passive check is passing. Let me change a little bit this dialog here. This is what I'm doing here. So I'm calling passive check in this match block. So this match block works like a match in JavaScript. And if it matches reptilian, it does the reptilian branch. If it matches inland, it's going to do the inland branch. If it matches limbic, it's going to do the limbic branch. And the thing is, if none of those match, like it might be like just the passive check didn't pass, so it's not going to show anything. So this is a little bit different from the other one that was a yes or no, either true or false. This one will allow me to having options of many skills being checked and then telling the dialog which branch I want to show. Let's come back here and say this is the passive check 1, 2, 3, right? This is the passive check that happens like in the intro dialog, right? You can name this in a more meaningful way. Just thinking about the responsibilities here, I'm going to create a passive checks handler. I'll get from ref counted, and I'm going to do handle passive check. So now in my dialog drawer, in here, I'm going to do this. If the variable name begins with passive check, so this is a pattern, you can define your own pattern. And then I'm going to just call passive handler, handle passive check, and I'm going to pass the variable name. So now in here, you can do whatever you want with the passive check. Let me remember, this is the one. If passive check name equals this, then you can do whatever is your passive check. You can use the skills, you can use whatever you need for your passive check. For now, I'll do something really silly here. Let me see, I have inland and limb. I'm gonna either trigger inland or limbic, and the way I'm gonna do it, this is super silly, by the way. So let me do this, return limbic, right? If rand f it's greater than 0.5, okay? Or else returns inland. So as I said, the game side is not part of this video. We are focusing on the dialogue here. For the dialogue, this doesn't matter. It just matters that this is being picked randomly. So now if I execute the game and I do passive dialogue, this is a dialogue line. After this line, you'll get a passive check. And here, I got inland empire. Now I'm going to execute again. I got inland empire again. So let me see, this is random. So, I mean, it might happen that we never really get anything else, I guess. Did I do that check right? Oh, see, I got limbic system. But yeah, so that's the idea. You got your passive check. But of course, if you see here, I didn't really get that passive check thing. So let's add that badge here. I guess what you could do is, instead of returning like the value like this, you could return a dictionary that has the value of the passive check, its difficulty, like this, and if it's passed or not, right? Because you want to know if it's failure, like this, right? I guess I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna create a script check result, right? And this check result will be like class name that extends ref counted. Yeah, so this one, what do I need in this one? So I need the value that can be anything as passed. And what was the other thing I said? Oh, difficulty, right? And difficulty could be a string if we want, but also if you really want to get fancy, you could have a num here, difficulty, and then this one would be difficulty. Okay, and let's get easy by default. And then you can override the init. Yep. Okay, so this is a good structure, and I can do something like that: get display string, right? And this one is going to be. This should give us the right string, and then now let's use it. So here in the passive check, what's going to do is that this is result, right? And then value, okay? And then we do return. Let's say that in this case it did succeed, so we use true, and difficulty I'm just going to do medium, all right? And in here I'm just going to do an empty check result. Coming back to the drawer, now I want to return the value directly. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do like passive check tag, and then it's a string, it's empty. And in here, we get this check result, and the passive check tag will be check result dot get display string, and then check result dot value. Right, so now we need to use this passive check tag, and this is going to be used when we add a line. So this part here, when we create the entry, I'm passing, there is a third option, remember, that's the passive check, so I can just do a passive check tag. And what I will have to do is, after this, is just I need to reset the passive check tag. So this should be enough to give us the check information. So passive, see, medium success. Honestly, I hadn't implemented this before, so it's just like it's the first time that came to my head to try to do it like this. And yeah, all right, I love it, yeah. So active checks are the ones, as I said, that comes as an option. So let me start a new file here for us. So, all right, so this is how active checks are presented. Usually you have like a list of options, and one of these options has this information here, like what is the check, how easy it is, or what's the attribute you need. They are shown differently, like they are either a white check that's retrievable or a red check you can only execute once. So in here, let's start by the interface. We need to show when it's a white check and when it's a red check. And I'm going to do this by using tags. So any line you can do something like this, and this is going to add a tag to the tag list on the content. So I'm going to use this to format our current button, our current option. I'm going to speed things up because this is a little bit more of the same. Okay, so I had to do a few changes. So this one, it was a margin container. I changed to be a panel container because now then I can change the background of the whole thing. And then I add this logic to, if like, here's how I'm checking the tags. So option tags, if it has the white check, it's white. If it has the red check, it's red. This is actually a little bit of a gray, not a white, but this doesn't matter. This is, I also added like the new dialog here. And you see when I select that one, it's all gray. And again, this is styling, you can change as it goes, but that's the idea. So now let's implement the whole active check. So here's how it's gonna work. When you select this option 3, it goes to the block for the calculus check. Because it's a white check, I'm gonna add as a plus here, because then it can be repeated. Also, you can always come back to the check. The way we're gonna request an active check is by using a Clyde feature called events. So it's basically you can trigger event that's going to be received in the game as a signal. So you can name the event, and the event in this case is active check. And the active check, you can send parameters to an event as well. It's optional, but you can. In this case, we do want it. We want to say that the skill that we need to check is visual calculus, and the level is 9. As I mentioned, Clyde always tries to get the next content. So you're always doing get content. So when you click here and we trigger the active check, this is actually going to try to get the next content. So if I don't put anything here, the next line is going to be returned, and this is not what we want to do. So I will have to add an extra spacing here just to have this line covered. Another thing I'm going to do is using tags to tell the drawer that you're not supposed to render this line. So I'm going to do this by adding a tag called active check, right? So this is going to tell the drawer, don't render this line. And then the last thing I need to do is to get the result for that check. And I'm going to do like I did for the passive check, or I'm going to be using external variables. So in this case, I'm doing this. So I'm going to do a check result. That's the variable I'm going to check. And if it's true, it's going to be success. If it's false, it's going to be failure. Yeah, let's now implement in the drawer the execution for this thing, right? So like this one, let me implement a script just for that. So this one will be active checks handler. So this one will be slightly different because for this one, I'm sending what is the skill and also the level, right? What's the level of that skill? I'm not going to use any of that for now, so just keep in mind that here's what you were going to be implementing that. What I'm going to do like I did before, just this silly check that will be either a success or a failure, right? Coming back to the drawer, here's what's going to happen. So first, I have another check here that needs to be variable name equals check result, right? So this is going to ask me for the actual active check. First of all, I need to listen for events. Like if I do dialog and I have event triggered, this is the signal you're looking for, right? Cool. So I'm just gonna set here the callback for my event triggered. First thing is the event name, and the second one is params, like this parameters. So now let's say if event name equals active check, and now we need to do handling the active check. So I'm gonna fake this one then, handle active check, right? So I'm gonna do here an await, create timer. Gonna do 2 seconds just to have some mystery here. So after we get the timeout, then we are going to continue the dialogue. So let me do this next line, right? Okay, it's going to do dialogue, is going to get the next line. But also we need to save the result for the active check. Last check result, okay? Process, active check, and then last check result. I mean, there are different ways of implementing this. Let's just do it like that. So now what's going to happen here is that this one is going to call active check handler and going to do process active check, right? And we need the parameters actually from here. So the first parameter is the skill. The second parameter is the level. So in here, we're just going to do skill, I'm going to do level, and I'm going to pass skill, and I'm going to pass level. I guess the type system is lacking here, but this is what we have for now. So now we need to handle actually this next thing, right? Because here's the thing. So we got here, when you got to the dialog line, remember we added like the active check tag. So now what we need to do is if the content tags has active check, this means that we're not supposed to show the next content just yet. So what we are going to do is basically set another variable that is waiting for active check. Just going to keep it close to this one. Perfect. And then here we're going to do is waiting for active check true, and we're just going to return. So this, as I said, this line is not going to be printed. Remember, this is the line, we don't want to print it. It's just really there to trigger the check. And then I guess once this check's ready, we can do is waiting for active check to be false. And then I had the passive check tag. I realized that's not just a passive check now, it's just a check, but we can rename later. And for this one, I'm actually going to do the same thing. I'm going to go active check handler, last check result, and we can do get display string, right? I guess what's missing, we need to do return, active check handler, last check result, and I'm looking if it succeeded, right? Perfect. Now if I execute this one, easy, success. I'm back to the future, you might say. Not your future though. So I'm here to demo the end result with some extra polishing. So I used this website I mentioned to get all the branches for the intro dialogue, so you can see all the features in action and how similar they look to the real thing. I also added some examples of how to do portraits and a silly animation to indicate the active check. You can find the source code for this project on my GitHub. This is the link. Just follow the link. As all my other samples, it's under the MIT license, so you can use however you want. And it's not a requirement, but if you do something cool with that, just let me know. I would love to see it. Needless to say, this video took me hours to make, so if you got this far, please leave a like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Do people even watch this far?